أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Inshallah everyone is well and is getting better and better bi'idhnillah by the grace of God and His mercy. So we are following on Wednesdays the 33rd word from the Risale Nun, which is these are windows on the various and different signs of God that look to His beautiful names and to His Rububiyyah. And we are at the fifth window. So far, we learned something very important, an important concept, which is that in order to be able to testify to Allah's unity, wahidiyah, that the totality of the creation belongs to Him alone, we need to start from ahadiyah, which is oneness, looking at specific events, and from there to generalize. And because we can encompass, we can grasp, we can understand, and we can testify single events. Now the fifth window, do we have someone who can, inshallah, start reading?
I can read, inshallah.
Thank you.
Fifth window. We see that things, and particularly living beings, come into existence of a sudden, instantaneously. But while things which appear suddenly out of a simple substance should be simple, formless, and without art, they are created with an art and beauty requiring much skill. They are decorated with painstaking embroideries requiring much time, and adorned with wonderful arts requiring many tools. Thus, just as each of these instantaneous, wondrous arts and beautiful combinations indicates the necessary existence of an all-wise creator and the unity of his dominicality, so in their totality do they show in most brilliant fashion an infinitely powerful, infinitely wise, necessarily existent one. So now, O stupefied denier, how can you explain this with nature, which is unconscious, impotent, and ignorant like you? Or do you want to make an infinite mistake and call that all-holy maker nature, and on the pretext of naming him that, attribute the miracles of his power to it, and perpetrate an impossibility compounded 1,000 times over?
Thank you, Jazakallah khair. Here, dominicality, again and again, it's always rububiyyah. Sometimes also translated as lordship or sustainership. Stupefied denier, it's more like confused denier, the original. And the all-holy maker is al-muqaddas. For me, holy, I don't know, native speakers can share, but holy doesn't mean much to me. I have a connotation of when you say holy, it means it's connected to the divine or something sacred, or like, for instance, the church, or it is consecrated, it is declared something declared as sacred. So in my understanding, it's always vague and somehow arbitrary. But the word in Arabic, muqaddas, which is from the same root, derived from the same root as the name of God, Al-Quddus, that appears in the Quran, for instance, Al-Malik Al-Quddus, which is translated sometimes as the most holy, the most pure, the most perfect. The name of Al-Quddus describes God as the unique, the unimaginable, someone with a being with a purity and perfection beyond imagination, a being whose goodness and righteousness are beyond our grasp and understanding. And that's why Al-Quddus is also understood as referring to the one who is set apart or distinct, different and separate from all worldly imperfection. Everything worldly has some imperfection, so he is different from all that. He is above any imperfection and fault. So he is, when you say Quddus, you have a connotation of purity and perfection that is beyond our grasp. And the root qadasa refers to being pure, clean, spotless. Spotless not only without stain, but also without fault, without imperfection. So if holiness means this, then it's okay. And I also felt the need to explain that holy here refers to muqaddas, because in the next window, the 6th window, it's going to focus on the perfection of Rububiyyah. How Rububiyyah, God's lordship, God's sustainership is perfect. So I think it's related to that. As far as the reasoning here is concerned, it's saying we see that all things, and particularly living beings, because it's easier to see the art and the beauty and the perfection in living things, especially because we see the Rububiyyah more also because they grow from something formless and lifeless into something that has life and therefore interacts with the rest of the world. For instance, if you think of birds, think of the beginning as an egg that looks inanimate and has a very simple form without any complexity, and then something that has shape and that grows and that sings and chirps and goes around and eats and interacts with the world and has life and all kinds of activities, is coming out.
Eyes and organs.
And sees and interacts with air, with food, with us, with with all kinds. I mean, it's beyond. It's so amazing, and so much that it's only when we are in a state of ghafla, when we are inattentive, when we are not thinking about it, that we may assume that this bird is coming from this egg. Otherwise, it's like saying someone is coming from this room. The room has nothing to do with who is coming out of it. Whenever, if it's like a room and whenever the door opens, someone shows up, we don't suddenly start thinking that this room is like the source of these people or whatever is coming out of it. And so it is with the earth or with eggs. And these eggs, they all look similar somehow, but what comes of them is so different. Subhanallah. So that's why he says, especially, particularly living beings, come into existence of a sudden, instantaneously. So here, this is a word that is important in this window, instantaneously. But while things which appear suddenly out of a simple substance should be simple, here should be simple in our common sense. Like the reasoning is, we have something that looks very simple substance, and normally we would expect things coming out of a simple substance to be simple themselves, to be formless, to be without art, without life, without anything. But here there is something going on. First, it's coming suddenly. Again, we expect when, well, let me put it the other way around. What is coming out is very complex, very complicated, very artful, very adorned. And first, we've seen in the previous windows that something simple cannot make something complicated and complex. Something lifeless cannot produce something with life. Here, there is another layer. It's happening suddenly, instantaneously. And in our common reasoning, common understanding, we expect some effort, some time, some tools, something, so that all these things are going to be accomplished. If something is done instantaneously, then it would not have any perfection in it. The less effort, the less art, the less perfection there is.
And Dr. Yamina, I feel like here, by mentioning form, it says simple, formless.
And without art.
Yeah, without art and form is mentioned. Form is mentioned first, and I feel like it's because it's easiest to detect. If I think of birds and their shapes and different shapes, as you said, it's very visible. I can be illiterate, I can be an expert of birds, doesn't matter. Everybody can see when you look at a bird how its form is so different than the liquid in the egg, and so detailed. So I wonder, somewhere Imam Nursi says that the Quran, when it talks about the signs of God in the universe, it shows the ones that are clearer and most accessible. And maybe that's why one of the names of God, Al-Musawwir, is mentioned in the Quran, because in that surah is easiest to access. Like you look at it, whoa, this bird with wings and beak. Even if I don't know its digestive system, or I can see its eyes, it's coming out of this liquid in this egg. So
their sizes are different, their colors are different,
yeah,
their shapes are different.
That this
the chirping and singing are all different.
Yeah, you're right, all of them are different. And I wanted to emphasize how nice it is that it's accessible. Like form is the most easiest to see. We just need to pause and think how all these different forms and shapes, in addition the art is coming through this, from this
formless, lifeless thing, substance. They are created with an art and beauty requiring much skill. They are decorated with painstaking embroideries, not only birds, but think even plants, like each one of them is so detailed. The art is so detailed. And I have a plant here that has tiny little red flowers, but when you come close, it's just like embroidery. It's like lace, very intricately, very nicely decorated and formed. Subhanallah, I say, out of it was a seed, and then it grew into a plant with beautiful leaves. The leaves themselves are decorated, and then you have this flowers, tiny little flowers. It's not easy to see them until you can come very close. And you have all these plants next to each other, and each one is so different from the other one, and each one is just so beautiful, and all different colors and different shapes, but they all have some kind of beauty that makes us want to plant them in our garden, to decorate our garden with them. So they are adorned painstakingly embroideries. Those embroideries, they just come. If we want to take a picture and embroider the same thing on a piece of cloth, for instance, just the outer form. It doesn't have. It's not alive. It's nothing. I'm not creating the substance itself, or just I want to paint it on paper. It's going to take skill and effort, and you have to be trained.
And that's another important point, right? That we are given these limited capacities to do art, to make something, to be able to have a sense of what it takes to create something so well done.
So to appreciate the creator.
Yeah, because with all this limited capacity that we have and artistry that we have, if we were given what is inside the egg, even if we're a team of people, right? We have a whole team of people in our labs. If they scramble this egg into a cup and said, here you go, this is your starting material, and just make this into a bird, we couldn't have. What the scientists do, they try to recreate the temperature and so on and wait so that it is made into a bird. But if here are the ingredients, this is the egg, and you can take the sunshine, whatever you want to do, just make it into, you make the embroideries and you turn this into a wing and eyes and beak, and don't forget the music, everything. Even if we had a huge lab of latest technology, we couldn't have done it, because as you said, it's a very different form of art, and also that inability for us to do it shows how exquisite art is in this bird, and it comes out effortlessly as we see it. And yet, even with our limited, I don't know if I'm able to express, I don't mean we can't clone or have
the cloning has to follow the rules.
Yeah, because the cloning, you take the thing and you still put the temperature and whatever pressure, whatever you need, and you wait for the thing
to wait according to your own will.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm saying is, like, if we were to given this and then sit down and do like with the way we do embroidery or the way we do painting, take whatever tools you have and turn this into wings and art and form, we wouldn't be able to. And that comparison is not so that we are really comparable to God. It's just a tool, a yardstick, as it says in the Risale, to realize that what's happening in front of our eyes every day is actually and it must actually be the work of an amazing artist creator. So we're using our limited capacity to make art or craft something to recognize when we see these things like that flower or the egg, to recognize that there must be someone who is doing this, and he must be extremely powerful and wise.
So he says, just as each of these instantaneous, again he's repeating it, wondrous arts and beautiful combinations indicates the necessary existence of an all-wise creator. Because it's not created just nicely and beautiful, but haphazardly. No, it's each, if a bird lives in water, then they have longer legs, longer beaks, so they can catch their prey, fish, and the one on the land is different. Each one has shape and everything in accordance to its environment in order to be able to sustain its life. So it's not created randomly and haphazardly. It's all very wise. There's necessary existence of an all-wise creator and the unity of his rububiyyah, wahdati rububiyyatihi. So in that totality, so this is each one of these shows, when we look at each one, it shows this necessary existence of an all-wise maker and in the unity of his rububiyyah. And when we look at the totality of them, they show in most brilliant fashion an infinitely powerful, infinitely wise, necessarily existent one. Yes?
I was just going to say a reminder that I needed just to put what we're reading now in the framework, that this is the commentary, the tafsir on the verse that we started with, 41:53, that this is being said to us so that this verse becomes, or this passage becomes clear, that says, we shall show them our signs in the furthest horizons and in themselves, so that it will become clear to them that this is the truth. Is it not enough that your sustainer witnesses all things? So for me, when I remembered that this 33 windows in the 33rd word is to help us see very clearly these signs of who it is, and the word is, isn't it enough of who your Rabb is, and that this being is witness. And that just for me made what we're reading now so profound as a reminder.
Yeah, true. Thank you.
May I share something?
Please do.
Salam alaikum, sister and sisters. This is Yamina. I was reading about a wildflower that I grew up with in New Jersey, a very common wildflower. And in order for this flower to be pollinated, the bee has to step on a trapdoor to get to the pollen. The weight of a honeybee isn't large enough to allow that trapdoor to drop, but the weight of a bumblebee is. And what that reminded me of is the interdependence, or this larger family of humanity and how we're all connected. There's a dependence, and it's obviously dependence on the creator, but sometimes when something, so ecologically speaking, when there isn't room for everything, or when there isn't a balance, then there's a loss, and that loss of that one habitat or animal or plant can have a large ripple effect. Mm-hmm. But when I initially read that, it made me think of the diversity of creation, the many different faces of the creator, and how we all have to come together into that divine unity to see that we're all part of something greater. It was a wonderful little story for me to read about that flower. Imagine that.
That's very, very true. The interconnectivity of everything, the interconnectedness. And I don't know, it was last week or the week before when we read one window about this interconnectedness. And we referred to this video that's on YouTube about something that happened in a national park where predators, where were they? The wolves were all decimated.
Yes.
And then after that, the whole park totally disappeared, became, it was flourishing, and it became like a desert. Even like the river started, the water in the river started drying. The riverbed was getting smaller and smaller until they introduced a group of wolves, and then the behavior of the other animals changed, and the greens and the trees and everything started growing again, and then the birds and all insects and things came back again, and the river also became alive again. Subhanallah. We're not aware of our interconnectedness until we break the balance. Yeah, it's very, very important. And of course, for some of us, we need to see it like happening like this physically at a grand scale. But people who are more in touch with themselves and with their Rabb, and therefore with the reality of the world, will notice it well before everything collapses, because they're aware of the unity and how we are all interconnected, and that makes us more than who we are. Because Imam Nursi has in the Risala, in the Shu'ala, the rays, I think it's the second ray, it's called the Risala al-Hasbiya, which is his reflection on Hasbunallah or Hasbi Allah. And there he said, like, eventually you realize that your body does not stop here with this physical little body, but it encompasses the whole universe. You realize that it's you as well. They are all part of who you are as well.
Dr. Yamina?
Yes.
May I say something?
Please go ahead.
So going back to what happened in the zoo that you were talking about, I wasn't aware of that news.
It's not a zoo, but a park, national park.
A park, a national park.
Yeah.
So, isn't that similar, and the interconnectivity that you're talking about, isn't that similar to this idea when people from my generation 60, started saying, oh, you know what, we're gonna get married, but we're not gonna have kids because the planet is this and that, and we wanna, protect the planet. While Allah protects the planet already, because we have all those natural disasters, every earthquake, millions of people die sometimes, so everything is interconnected. It's just when human beings have the arrogance of thinking that, oh, we can do this via this, it ends up being messed up. While when they leave it to the Lord,
we cannot,
Allah.
True, we cannot better things. We can only destroy.
True.
Yeah, we can only destroy. We cannot make anything better than it is. So far, we can see that we can only contribute to pollution and to destroying the harmony and the balance in the creation. And we do that to the extent that we do it within ourselves as well, because each human being is like a cosmos, a microcosmos. And so we do that in our own. It's like a parallel. There is a balance and harmony in the whole universe, and there is a balance and harmony within us. And we need to also find that unity and wholeness within ourselves and keep the balance, inshallah, as well. Remember, this ayah at the beginning says the signs are in the horizon, like in the universe out there, and within ourselves as well. Inshallah.
Dr. Yamina, if I may, like this
Yeah.
makes what just clicked to me is the word unity out there and in here, because like Maha always reminds us, like, okay, seeing everything beautiful and perfect over there, okay, and then so what? Okay, so this perfect miracle, it just becomes kind of hard to bridge that connection into your personal life. So now that bridge, mashallah, just occurred to me just now with this word unity of his dominicality out there. So all of these events that are happening to our lives out there, people, relationships, different, humans that we're interacting with, is also coming from that same place of all wise, all compassionate power. And that's the bridge. Like, so this bridge now is saying this, the way that you feel and everything that I'm experiencing and all of the people that I'm experiencing too, it just makes you see it through a window, like this is all coming from the same place. So it's not only the egg that's hatching into a beautiful chick, but it's this, sudden event that hatches in your life, that comes, that, maybe in a face that you don't like, or
Yes.
in a way that you don't like.
Or it could be an event in your life. It could be a potential that you've been given that will also hatch instantaneously into something very beautiful, full of art and perfection. Yeah. So we are again and again encouraged in the Quran to reflect on the ayat, on the signs, on the perfection, on the rububiyyah in the world out there, and they attract our attention. We are created in a way that they do attract our attention when we make that intention, and instead of ignoring them and being stuck into some corner of our life, when we open up, and then from there we witness and we testify to this rububiyyah, to the perfection and the beauty of the creation, to the infinite power and mercy and wisdom of our Maker. Then, as you said, we can bring it back to our life. And isn't that wonderful? That so much beauty, so much art, so much perfection come into existence right in front of our eyes, easily, effortlessly, instantaneously. Isn't that means that there are infinite possibilities of miracles pertaining to this world, not only to the world outside, but the same applies to our own life and the people around us. And not only to this world, it's not limited to this world, but to the next world as well. And personally, it fills my heart with joy. Alhamdulillah, isn't that like, it's great news? To the extent that we truly testify it, witness it, and taste these beautiful names, then they bring really satisfaction to the human heart. Like Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he said he wanted to see how God resurrects the dead, and God said, don't you believe? And he said, لِيَطْمَئِنَّ قَلْبِي. He said, no, I do believe, but I want my heart to be satisfied, because to believe and there is something more when you are totally certain. So you feel really there is no doubt and no fear and no anxiety about what if. The more certainty we have of those beautiful names of God, the more when those doubts come, immediately we stop them. We can say, stop. Don't you see? He creates out of nothing. He makes beautiful things out of very simple, formless substances. You say, oh yes, Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah. If this is my sustainer, my maker, then all is fine. In the last paragraph, it says, so now, O stupefied or O confused denier, how can you explain this? Of course, when we are, the first paragraph is we are reasoning with the heart, because if the heart is not involved, it seems like it's out there. I don't know what happens. Maybe it's from the egg, maybe, I don't know. But when we are involved, as we are told in the Quran, the only true reasoning is with the heart. Why? Because reasoning is only a process, a tool. It's either we either use it, and we did this in, I think it was the 6th word, either it is used by the heart in the name of God, consciously, attentively, intentionally, or it is used unbeknown to us in the name of the ego. What does it mean? It means we are taking for granted some premises that the ego put those premises, some beliefs, and we don't question them because we are in a state of ghafla, in a state of heedlessness, mindlessness. And we don't want to question them, and we take them as if it's an axiom of life, a truth, a universal truth. But when we are conscious, when we are aware, then we question them, and it is the heart that questions them. For instance, we are told in the Quran the questioning of Ibrahim alayhi salam when he says, "La uhibbul afilin." I do not love what sets. I do not love transience. So something transient cannot be a creator, cannot be a Rabb, cannot be the source of anything, because it cannot sustain itself. This the heart understands. Once the heart questions it, then we can go and look for evidence in the world through reasoning. But we have to start with intentional reasoning, let's say. That's why it says here, you're all stupefied, or like someone who is not conscious. How can you explain this? Actually, the same word in the original, stupefied, and with nature, which is unconscious, the same word is used. So, all unconscious denier. With nature, which is unconscious.
Sister Naima had her hand up. Sister Naima had a comment.
Please go ahead.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Okay, assalamu alaikum. So just this, I guess this is making me think about this like awareness that you achieve, right? So you achieve this awareness of your existence and the interconnectedness of everything that exists in the world and how it's connected to Allah and how it comes from Allah. And then, the question that then comes to me is like, what next? What do you do with that? What do you do with that awareness? And so, something that I've been contemplating myself is like, it's impossible to really exercise, this heart work and like connection to Allah if you have this siloed existence where you're just like by yourself and you're contemplating this all the time and not doing anything with it. And I feel like one of the biggest challenges, personal opinion, one of the biggest challenges, and, you know, part of the experience of like awareness and understanding who you are and where you are is actually, you know, faith through practice and service. And, you know, I was just, you know, not questioning, but, you know, I feel like once you have this awareness, you cannot just not do anything with it. It's like your heart is pulling you to do some kind of service in the world to really, you know, some people say like earn your place here and earn your place beyond here. And so, you know, it's just this constant awareness and action for me that I'm contemplating. What do I do with this awareness? How do I get that heart muscle and that spirit muscle and that soul muscle like ready and continuously doing the work? So that's just like a reflection and question that I'm asking myself, and just maybe you have an answer to that, I don't know. But it's just something that I was reflecting on as we're talking about this awareness and this state of being.
Mm-hmm. Now, we can, if we are not living in that state, then we can talk about it and we wonder what will happen afterwards. But if we actually take the first step, which is to make the intention, to live more consciously, to remember who we are, to remember who our sustainer is, and to be attentive to that reality, and to be attentive to the signs that keep they don't only remind us of that reality, but they also expand our awareness and our grasp and our knowing God in multiple and myriad ways, and deeper and deeper, so we become aware of how close we are to Him. When we are in that state, we will be aware when we are inspired and guided, because the guidance from the Quran is also, we are also guided in the creation. When we are aware, we don't miss that guidance, those insights, that inspiration, because the insight is open, the inner sight is open. And so we start taking action when we are nudged, let's say. We will feel the nudge and we will take action accordingly. So we don't ask, what shall I do? What is beyond that? Because ihsan is a state of being, it's a state of awareness, of being aware of living in the presence of God. But it also, because of that, ihsan has also an aspect, a dimension that looks to the others outwardly. So it's like an iceberg, but the tip of the iceberg is something that people from outside can also see, which translates into beautiful words, beautiful demeanor, humility, and service. Service is definitely very important, but I personally believe that it has to come from inside out. It does not mean that there shouldn't be encouragement to service, especially for the youth, because it works both ways. If I give a very simple example, when we are grateful and when we are grateful and happy, whatever is going on, then it can be seen in our face. If we are angry or frustrated or something, our face also will show that. But at the same time, if someone is used to keeping and smiling, so that like the memory of the body will also help us go back to that state of gratitude. Of course, if the person is aware and conscious and mindful, because otherwise there is nothing to remember. We have to know something in order to remember it. So it works both ways. Once the body has acquired that memory, then we do it automatically, and then we remember and we come back. It becomes easier to come back into that state of presence in with God, presence with remembering who we are, what we are doing in this world. And it is the same with service. So we want to cultivate within ourselves that awareness, that ihsan, but ihsan only comes after Islam, surrender, and iman, belief, which means that we know God with his beautiful names. It means we are acquainted, familiar with the beautiful names of God in our life. It means we are acquainted with testifying them in our life. So when we have that awareness, we will be inspired and guided into what is best for us, into what we have been created for. And we will be fulfilling the purpose of our life to, in a way, it has to include serving serving others in the name of God. But when we are in that service also nourishes us and nourishes that what is inside. It's like imagine a fruit in the tree. The service will be, or the action, any kind of action, is like the skin of the fruit. The skin may seem like it's just a skin, it's not important. No, when it is alive in the living, in the tree, the skin not only protects, but it also means of nourishment and sustaining the fruit for it to grow. And so to have, how do you say? Yes, something, an established system of serving, especially for the youth, is very important, because otherwise, when they are not busy with something much bigger than them, they become much more self-absorbed and how do you say, self-centered. And so tiny little problems become a means to rebelling or being angry or ungrateful or all kinds of things. And however much we want to reason with them or to show them the way, they sometimes, when we're stuck in a way of being, we become blind. So that's a way to help people out. But of course, at the same time, they also have to have an intention and an effort. So the inner and the outer work together, but what sustains and what makes that way of being perpetuated is primarily the inside, the intention, the attention we put into it. And the outside is the support system. But anyways, thank you for sharing. But we were not talking about this here.
Dr. Yamina,
we are talking more about nourishing the inside and how this inside is how do we nourish the inside? Through the creation of God, because we want to know our Creator, so we trust Him fully, and we know our Creator through His creation. Yes, Isra.
Jazakallah khair, Dr. Yamina. Thank you very much. I just wanted to recap at this point. Sister Naima's question was where do we go with the awareness? as we cultivate this awareness, is it, as I heard her, is it going to have also fruits in action and in service? And
yes, definitely.
yes, of course it will and it should.
If it doesn't, something is
Something is
again another
yeah. So
going wrong. Maybe I'm just deluding myself.
yeah. And so it goes both ways as we become more and more convinced internally that this world is being sustained by a wise and infinitely powerful and compassionate being. We will be able to form our lives or live our lives and act in response to that. And it goes both ways. So there sometimes we might think, well, I'm not up to this, but it doesn't have to be that I have to wait to be able to do this service or action. Sometimes starting with that surrender and action will also, not sometimes, as I hear you saying, that will nurture the inner connection as well. So if I believe in a generous creator, and then I have a guideline that I must give zakat minimum, and even if a part of me is feeling stingy, or I could use this for something else, but I have to give it because that's what revelation is asking me to do. Okay, I'm gonna calculate this. I'm just talking about financial giving at this, just as an example. And as I give it, in that act of giving, there will be a fruit both internally and externally. So and there's this
only if there is, I'm working on the or at least part of me is giving willingly and is surrendering.
Yeah.
If I'm not surrendering, I've seen people after many years, now I hear that they left everything. So we have to not only rely on the action has to come from inside out.
Mm-hmm.
But if there is action when outside, it doesn't mean we shouldn't start with action. Because if I am willing to start with that action, it means I have that much intention, that much willingness too.
Yeah. I wanted to also piggyback on Sister's question, Sister Naima's question, because earlier you mentioned that we can only destroy the balance. We can't really make it better. Just to clarify, you also mean that we can try to keep the balance and support that balance, right? All we can do is destroy.
When we are not destroying it, it means we are getting acquainted with the balance in order to keep it.
Yeah.
That's what we are supposed to do anyways.
Yeah, and
act in accordance, in harmony with the order, in harmony with the balance is to find our own inner balance.
Mm-hmm. I don't want to divert the subject, but thinking about environmental balance, for instance, it doesn't mean that we will not have a civilization, we will not cut down some trees to build or have farms, because we left nature as is, then it would be there, but then human being has needs, and we have seen
but there is waste, something called waste as well.
Yeah, so it isn't about not touching anything, it's about we have been given needs, and even in the Quran it talks about how God sent things so that we can protect ourselves, we can make a living. So it isn't about being active in the sense of going out there and constructing something or farming or doing something out there in the world.
We are responsible for our intention as well. For instance, water. The Prophet ﷺ says, even if you are making wudu by the sea, do not waste water. I mean, if you're by the sea, the water is coming back into the sea. He said, don't waste it, because when we waste, if for instance, we open the, what was it called?
Faucet?
Yeah, the faucet, the water, and then it's there because we have water here. Okay, someone may say in other places they don't have water. Water actually is all related. But even if that I'm not aware of that, I am told you don't waste it, even if you're not paying for it, even if you can pay for it easily, even if you don't have, if you have lots of water. It is also, in a way, an education, a training of awareness. Put the water off when you are not using it. When you are using it, if you need only a little, why do you open it totally like this? So this is something that we do all. So you see there, it's about the intention. That action changes. I can't say, but I'm not polluting the rivers and this and that. Yeah, but I'm responsible for what I have in front of me first. For instance. And for instance,
Yamina,
processed food. Processed food is bad for our health. And the more processed food, the more packages, the more waste, the more we are what was it? Polluting the earth and everywhere. So there is a minimum that we cannot avoid, but there is also something that we can do. And you say, isn't that too much? No, if you have that awareness of surrendering to the will of God, everything becomes not only easy, but it becomes a pleasure. You are happy. Oh, less waste. It makes you very happy. It's the name Quddus, the pure, the less waste in the less pollution. So it's, yeah. Yes.
can you please tie together everything? Because I understand some, I mean, separate phrases, but I can't, I think I'm missing the thread, how everything is being tied together. And I apologize because I couldn't hear for a while, so it could be my fault. But if you can do a recap so that I'm tying all these themes.
There have been two different topics. They are related, but we don't have the time to unfold the relationship between the connection. One is in this window that we are looking at the world out there, understanding God in a certain way and applying it to ourselves. The second is a question that was asked, which is, how do you put the question? Is awareness, does it lead to action? And of course it leads to action. That's what the word for it actually in the Quran is ihsan, which includes action. Action, but action is the tip of the iceberg. It has to be grounded in that awareness, in that remembrance of God, in that presence, living in the presence of God. And then the action will come from inside out. And of course, if there is it's always going to be inside out, because even if there is a whole system of service, I will only be part of it and benefit from it and benefit it to the extent that I have the intention and I am aware of its value. And that awareness is going to vary from person to person, because it's something like Iman, it grows, something that we are supposed to nourish and nurture and cultivate. Does it make sense? Maha and Naima.
Yes.
Naima.
Yes. Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jazakallah khair.
Thank you. So at the end of this fifth window, we are told, oh now, so now, oh unconscious denier, how can you explain this with nature, which is unconscious, impotent, here is ajiz, powerless, and ignorant like you? Or do you want to make an infinite mistake and call the all-holy, the all-perfect maker, nature? So you are actually attributing what belongs to the maker, you're attributing to something that is unconscious, has nothing, which is called nature. And on the pretext of naming him that, attribute the miracles of his power to nature and perpetrate an impossibility compounded 1,000 times over. So always the La ilaha is these things that you want to attribute, these miracles of art and beauty and creativity and power, how can you attribute them to something that is unconscious, lifeless, has no power, powerless? So that's again, always the La ilaha. Why can we say illallah? There is only one God, the source of all this, because we look around and nothing can be God. The fact that they are all transient, like Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he was going looking for his Rabb, everything he found was transient. If it is transient, it cannot create anything because it itself needs to be sustained. It is being itself sustained. So that's basic reasoning, but it's only when we make the intention, when we are consciously, attentively looking at things in that way, that we can reason in that way. Otherwise, it's not because we are reasoning or because we didn't understand this basic reasoning. It's because we don't reason at all. We take things for granted. We don't stop and say, oh, how is it like I think water is making this plant grow? We don't say that. We don't think that. The whole thing is we don't think it, we don't, but we don't question it. And so even when we say that God is the creator of all things, God gives life to all things, in our heart, in our interaction with the world, it feels like water is important to us. And God, we don't feel his importance in our heart because we don't know him with his beautiful names, unless we have been actively performing the Shahada, testifying to his beautiful names in the world here and now. If we have not done that, we often mistake our not denying the existence of God as a belief in God. Belief in God is not that. That's why in the Quran we are told most people do not believe in God except as mushrik, in a state of shirk, in a state of associating other things with God, as if those things are also doing something, creating something. And of course, the mushriks on the day of judgment will say, no, we were not mushriks, because they were not aware. That's the whole thing about being in shirk. Though the total deniers, they may say, no, I deny. But the mushrik is someone who is unaware of what he's doing. So he is committing shirk without realizing it. The next window, the sixth window, is on the perfection of Rububiyyah, and it starts with an ayah from Surah Al-Baqarah,
Dr. Yamina, before you move, I had my hand raised, but I guess nobody noticed.
See that, so don't raise
Yeah.
your hand. Just voice your Please go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to be polite because I feel like when I speak, I'm interrupting you. So on the point you were talking about, the concept of shirk and
Yes.
so actually it's a two-part question. First of all, like scientific people, how can we, do compose an exam for ourselves to see if we are living in ghafla, a state of not knowing Allah. And the second one, I keep hearing the idea, I think that's what I'm hearing from you, that step one for knowing Allah is to know His Asma Allah al-Husna. Is that true? So those are my questions.
I don't know about if it's a test or not. I don't know if everyone works in the same way, but the formula given to us in the Shahada is La ilaha illallah. And so La ilaha, it's like in my life, if I have anxiety about money, for instance, lack of money, so I say to myself, is this my ilah? La ilaha illallah. Here, for instance, it could be La razzaqa illallah. And when I say La razzaqa, there is no provider except God, and I put my hand on my heart, and if it does not satisfy me, it says, yeah, I feel a voice within me saying, yes, I know that, but I need this job, I need this money, I need that. Then I understand that I do not yet know God as the Razzaq, the provider, the only provider. Of course, He provides through different means, but if He is the provider, if all means of provision, all the rest is in His hand, under His control, then if what seems to be a source, but actually it's only a door, closes, then another one will open. If I have witnessed, if I've done the work and looked around before this happens to me and said, this looks like Razzaq, like Ibrahim alayhi salam, this looks like Rabb, this job looks like Razzaq to me, looks like the source of my provision and my livelihood. Is it true? I didn't always have it. And if this is not here, people have all kinds of different ways of making a livelihood. So this cannot be my Razzaq, my provider. If I have done this again and again in my life, is the food my provider? No, the food doesn't know. It is unconscious, doesn't have the power, doesn't have the knowledge, doesn't have anything. Most importantly, they cannot even sustain my life. They have their unconscious means they don't know anything about me. They have no mercy, no compassion, nothing. If it says in the Quran, if you call them, they don't answer you. So I said, this cannot be my Rabb, this cannot be my provider. This cannot be my provider. The more I do this work, the more my heart is truly convinced and certain that I have only one provider, and that's God, the sustainer of all things. Then if something happens and I lose what I thought was the source of my livelihood, I don't see it as the source of my livelihood anymore. It's a door, it was a means. I stop and say, Subhanallah, you took this, I am waiting for where you are going to show your razaqiyah, your providing. You always have provided for me since I was a child. when I didn't know anything. So today you were providing for me with this, tomorrow we will provide for something else. So it becomes not an opportunity to cry and fear and and say, please God, give me the same, as if that's the source. God has nothing to do with my life. Only when I feel helpless, I call on to him. That's not true prayer, because I'm not connected. I'm not aware of my connection with him.
Isn't that why we're supposed to do the du'as? Allahumma hawilni min hawli wa quwwati. I'm sorry, I cannot translate it. You, Dr. Yamina, can translate it. Allahumma hawilni min, because the language of Quran, you know, when it goes to English, you know how sophisticated, and I'm a PhD in engineering, not in linguistics. So, Allahumma hawilni min hawli wa quwwati ila hawlik wa quwwatik. And then the other one, Allahumma aghnina bihalalaka an haramak. اللهم اكفنا بفضلك عن من سواك. So this kills any anxiety about any form of sustenance that we can be anxious about.
Yes. However, making this dua does not mean I repeat it only. I have to practice it.
Yeah. By, for example, when being fired unjustly, not dwelling over it and knowing that, trusting that my sustenance will come from somewhere else, you know.
Yeah.
When my health is in endangerment, and I'm being told, oh, you know what, we can perform that surgery on you, but there is 50% chance that you will live 2.5 years. And then I say to myself, no, only Allah knows that maybe I'll die tonight, or maybe I'll live another 10 years. So, I mean, are you following?
Work before, not only on that, when I lose the job, I do the work all the time. That's what I have been sent to in this life, to know God and worship him alone. So I do this all the time. And so when I know God as Razak, and when the job is taken, if I'm still anxious, I make istighfar. I ask for forgiveness. I forgot that you are the provider, or I still don't know you as the only provider, 100%. That's what Tawheed is, one God, one provider, 100%. It still feels like you are 70% and 30% is the job and the money. So I make istighfar and go back on work on my relationship with God as the provider, for instance, until I feel totally at peace with whatever is happening, because everything is under his control and I trust him fully.
Yeah. So part of it is the dua, part of it is the increasing of the amount of voluntary prayers. I mean, I'm just, you know, like thinking out loud with you.
Dua is not only words that I say.
No, it's not words. It comes from the heart, because one is really, you know, like, for example, there are personal affliction, you know, like as much as having kids is described as a part of zinat dunya, but also it can be painful to have a child when they are not bar and when they're not. I'm sorry for, I tend to shy away from translating the Arabic to English, so because I you know, I haven't studied the language of Quran in English, so feel free for the, you know, for the sake of the session, whenever I say something in Arabic, feel free to say it to the others. But I don't want to translate it to something scientifically, you know, might be correct, but language of Quran would be wrong. So that's why I'm saying some things in Arabic. So going back on track, a lot of things that sounds or looks like zinatul hayat dunya, they come, and then at a certain point they become the actual test described in verse number 151 in Surah Al-Baqarah. وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِنَ الخوف, which does not mean the normal fear. I mean, it means something beyond, more deeper than that. والجوع, برضو, it doesn't mean the regular hunger, it's deeper than that. ونقص في الأموال والأنفس والثمرات وبشر الصابرين. So those same things that can be, you know, زينة الحياة الدنيا are also the same things that can give agony in this life.
Yes, because they are not. Zinatul Hayat Dunya is the enjoyment and gifts of the blessings of life. The blessings of life are blessings by God's permission. In themselves, they can also be the opposite of a blessing. So,
And he can choose to make them to become from a source of blessing to become a source of testing one's faith.
yeah, all that is correct. Only one thing is the reflection, the du'as that we say are to remind us to actually perform the dua, to perform what we are saying, to perform the reflection, to do it actually. It's an inside, an inner action. No one sees it out there, but it changes everything because it changes who we are, how we perceive ourselves, how we perceive the world. And so
I do not know what the others feel, but I know that for me personally, every time I've gone through these afflictions, the dua becomes even like more and more and more from inside me. I'm not reciting those words out of nothing. I'm feeling them. They're coming from my heart.
of course, I am saying, let's not wait only for, when we are in those situations, we definitely get glimpses and we understand, we taste the meaning more deeply. But I'm saying, when we are not in those situations, we also need to do the work so it becomes our default way of being. So that when we are in those difficult times, not only it becomes easy, but those difficult times becomes opportunities to get even closer to God. So they become opportunities to deepen our worship and our connection with God and fulfill the purpose of our creation at a deeper and deeper level.
So key words from what you just said, the default. This is the default
is to be in remembrance of God, to learn how to
all the time, in the time of goodness and in the time of being tested.
Yes, in the Quran we are told again and again to contemplate and reflect. For instance, we are told, we've seen this ayah not long ago. أولم يتفكروا في أنفسهم ما خلق الله السماوات والأرض وما بينهما إلا بالحق وأجل مسمى. Do they not reflect within themselves how God did not create the heavens and the earth and what is between them? Well, in Arabic you say it in the negative, but actually how God creates the heavens and the earth and what is between them, except with truth and an appointed term. And also
the mountains, how are they holding themselves from collapsing on us?
Just on the tafakkur, the contemplation and reflection.
But so the concept of making it the default in times of goodness and times of affliction goes also to the concept of the test of knowing, which I can't quote which Imam, I don't know, I think it's Anas ibn Malik, but I can't remember the story. You might remember it, when a man entered the mosque and said an dua for Allah, and he said, Allah, I hope you are having rida. I don't know if rida should be satisfaction. I hope you are radi anni. I don't know if it should be that word. Imam, I can't remember if it was Anas ibn Malik. It was one of the four Imams heard him. I can't remember which one. So he asked the man, are you satisfied with your Lord? Are you راضي عن ربنا
Yeah.
so that you would be daring to ask Rabbina if he's راضي عنك? So the man asks him, what do you mean? So he explains it as to be راضي عن ربنا
Are you
is that the rida with the niqmah is equal to with the rida in the state of ni'mah. And I'm shying away from translating that. So that's what I'm working on, for example, for a while now. For a year, I've been working because I discovered that I think that I am I am radiyah with what Allah writes for me, and but I might not. So let me work on this. Let me work on every time I have something bad happening. Let me work on that. My reaction is sujud shukr, real shukr. Let me work on that until I can figure out that status where my rida with ni'mah is equal to my rida with niqmah, so I can finally get my wish, which is Allahumma tawaffani wa anta radi anni. And I'm so sorry for using Arabic, so feel free to translate what I just was asking you about.
There is also the ayah where it says, so Radia is pleased.
Okay.
When it says, يا أيها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى
ربك راضية مرضية.
راضية مرضية.
مرضية فادخلي في عبادي وادخلي جنتي.
So راضية there, you need to be راضية, you need to be yourself pleased with God so that you will be pleasing, so that whatever God gives you is pleasing. If I'm not pleased if my intention is, I have not reached that understanding, that presence, that understanding of the creation in a way that wherever I look, I see wajh Allah, I see the countenance of God, I see the beautiful names that looks to God, that look to akhirah, to eternal life. When I learn that, because that's what we are being taught in the Quran, then I will be pleased with whatever befalls me. And when I am pleased, then everything will be pleasing. It seems,
but also seeking the highest objective, which is his rida, because I can't get his rida unless if I myself truly have rida on Allah.
But this ayah is saying this is how you reach his rida.
So
but
in our
sorry.
So in our human life on
we
this,
are jumping from one. Rida is a higher state. We are not even there. That's why usually I don't talk about Rida, because we are not even convinced. Before Rida is a higher state of being pleased, of acceptance. Well, first, let's surrender. Let's have Iman. Let's have Ihsan, and then there will be Rida, inshallah.
So for example, I'm going to mention them, and then feel free after that to tell if there are other tools. For example, one of the things I started doing is that I was sharing that with Maha Nuruddin recently. I said I went to have an MRI, and I actually know the results of the MRI. It's just, it's always going to be bad results, and it was, but when you have to fill out this paperwork, about, physical history. So I told Maha, that was the first time I realized I have 15 serious illnesses that I marked as I do not have them to be thankful for when I was filling that paperwork. So I told her, I think that was a part of the exercise of me working on that my rida with niqmah is equal to my rida with Nama. The other one is when I got the news of that unbelievable thing, that terminal cancer. So I acted with sujood shukr, and nobody can understand in the hospital because I'm paralyzed. So they didn't know I'm bowing out of it. They thought my back is hurting. So these are, do you have any other recommendations?
For instance, like?
For working on reaching the state of, you define, you use the word pleased, yeah, and I was using the wrong word, satisfaction, for defining rida.
How about you focus on Alhamdulillah?
Yeah, what should I do? Go along sujood, because I cannot do the breathing exercise anatomy wise. So I go along sujood.
Even the
Shukr.
look, even the breathing exercise is a means to get to that place where it becomes our default way of being. It's only a means. It's like when we have an illness, if I'm coughing, you take something, some herb, some medicine. So it's not our until we get well. When we get well, when we get into that state, when we are always aware of our ubudiyah, when we are always or mostly in a state of ihsan, so that when we go out of it, we can remember and get back into it, then we don't need exercises. Exercises as only when we are in need of anchoring ourselves. So
when do we know we got to that state?
You will
and
know.
that we no longer need
you will know because you want to, without writing it or something, you will find yourself always in state of hamd, for instance. So why not focus on saying the word Alhamdulillah and feeling the gratitude in your heart? Now, you may say, well, I don't feel anything, I don't feel gratitude. Then if you don't feel it, again, it is a temporary situation. Remember something that makes you very, very grateful to God. And when you remember it, you will remember the feeling and associate it with Alhamdulillah.
This is what I do in that voluntary sujood. I go, there is an anatomy problem between me and which I'm trying to work on it, the breathing exercise. So
I'm saying not only in sujood, I'm saying all the time.
I go into a voluntary sujood.
You do in the evening. And wherever you find yourself like you're not doing anything, again, Alhamdulillah, write it everywhere.
Exactly.
Alhamdulillah. But those Alhamdulillah, those words,
I'm associating them by trying to remember what I am thankful for. So I'm associating them with the things.
That your heart is also feeling the gratitude. Focus on this.
Sometimes, Dr. Yamina, when I'm doing it, there are some times when I cannot know how to describe it. It's almost like I end up being in a trance and I'm disconnected from this life and I'm just in a state of, I don't know how do we say it in English, in a state of I cannot remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, sometimes from that exercise of working on that long sujood, associating the word hamd and shukr with real things that I am thinking about, not empty words that I'm reciting like a robot, I enter that trance.
Alhamdulillah. We only want to have that feeling with Alhamdulillah. Once we get that feeling, we no need to focus on the things because the thing may not be here now. We are grateful and thankful and praising God, Alhamdulillah, ala kulli hal, in every situation. But why do we in the beginning remember something? Because sometimes we are not used to being in that state of gratitude. So we are getting used to it. And gratitude is when we are in a state of gratitude, we cannot be at the same time angry or disappointed.
Exactly. That's how I know that's how I know I didn't hit it, because for example, recently I'm meeting a lot of cancer-related medical providers, and it's like they have all kind of a training of how to make my smile, the bad news that they're giving me, disappear and end up being either one of two things. One of them is to have tears. I've trained myself from a long time ago to never show my tears in front of anybody, but it's like it's teasing for them that I am receiving the bad news with a smile, because in my brain what I'm doing, and they do not know about it, is I'm doing hamd when I'm hearing them. So I'm doing hamd shukr. So that is why the smile. So it's like I feel they are having a target, that they are adamant about me leaving the office with the smile wiped out, and either a state of tearing up a little bit, which I told you I trained myself not to ever do it as an academic and a professor. You know, you have to be strong. You know, you cannot allow a student to make you angry. You cannot allow your student to make you tear up. And I'm teaching adult people, so you know they have a capacity of, you know. So as part of my training and academic, when I am faced with those people around me, those new med providers around me, adamant about either making me tear up, or the other one, this is the one that scares me, that up till that moment, they can actually make me angry. So I know
no one can make us angry or anything. Whatever they decide looks to them. I decide to be angry at something or not. Even if someone is out
it's their persistence on whatever, you know, like whatever they're telling me is them being persistent.
Hanan, let us listen, please. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
We can't hear Yamina at all.
Yeah,
Finish,
sorry.
Yamina.
Yeah.
Let us listen.
Thank you.
Listen.
Yeah, thank you for
Thank you for
reminding
sharing your story and your personal experiences. But sometimes we also need to listen.
Yeah,
so
no,
let us hear Yamina. Let us. The time is ending, and we weren't able to.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna even mute me.
However, whatever the other whoever it is doing, even if we were sure, which we can't be sure, because as the Prophet ﷺ said, have you opened their heart and seen their intention? So we don't know their intention is, but even if it seems to me for sure that they are out there to make me angry, for instance, no one can make me angry. Even if they want to make me angry, at the end of the day, it's me who gets angry or not. Therefore, it is my decision, my choice. Someone wants to make me angry, but I don't want to be angry. That's it. I don't get angry. The choice is given to us, and that's why we are responsible for our responses. When we are unaware, it seems to us that someone is making me do something, but is it true? Can someone make me do something? No, at the end of the day, if I am aware, I choose how to respond. And if I decide that I'm not going to be angry, then whatever happens, I won't be angry. Or even if the situation requires anger, anger can be, I am angry. What does it require to do? That I take a stand. I take a stand without shouting, without screaming, without anything. So the anger fulfilled its purpose. If I decide that it is wise to be angry in this situation, still that anger can be, I can listen to it and act wisely. So it's at the end of the day, we choose how to respond to different situations. And when we are aware of that, it makes us more or a calmer, because we don't feel helpless and at the mercy of different situations and different people. No one has control over me except my Rabb. And my Rabb is my supporter, and he is my sustainer. He's with me, not against me.
You know, Dr. Yamina, how many years I've been hearing from psychologists that nobody can make you angry. So I'm hearing the same thing from you. And my question would be, is it even humane that a person cannot have a reaction to something?
No,
Anger?
I'm not talking about the reaction. I'm saying that the reaction can be a response. Rather, reacting means I'm reacting without thinking, without knowing what's going on. So someone can just knows my buttons, my weak points. When I say this word, she will get angry, and I will be under the control of others. The reality is it true that people can control me? No, only if I give them the power to control, because I am either consciously choosing to respond in a certain way or unconsciously just reacting. Do we want to just react, or do we want to answer? And that's why I said when I am responding, I may feel fit sometimes, for instance, with a child. A child is doing something nasty and looking at you like this, and you feel that he needs to know that I am angry. So I am not angry, how to say, out of control. I think about it, I make a judgment of the situation. How do I make this child understand that this is wrong and people will be angry? I am not accepting this. So I will say it in a way that he understands, rather than in a way to satisfy myself and shout and scream and the judge said, what's going on here? Yes.
Yamina?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And can help us. It's her specialty. Go ahead, sister.
Thank you. We were just doing a class on this the other night, a class in the Charlottesville area and beyond. And I read a wonderful definition about anger. Anger's a thought with judgment attached to it. Totally. So I'm not asking you to accept that as truth. People might want to think about it. Is that true for me? So, and the reason, for example, if I'm angry, I have a thought with a judgment, is because I have unmet needs. It's not I need you to, but it's simply what I need. So I'm allowing myself to have needs. Maybe I'm feeling angry and judgmental at somebody because they were running late and now we're getting late to an appointment. But my need is for timeliness, perhaps.
Or maybe I take it as disrespect and my need is for respect.
Well, disrespect is, so it gets a little unusual like this. I have a need for respect. If I think that someone is disrespecting me, I'm attaching a story. I don't know that they're disrespecting me. This happened the other day, and it wasn't that there was disrespect. Something happened that was beyond our control that made us run late. And I'm in the car and I said, oh, and to myself, I have a choice. We're going to the same place. I can choose to sit here with angry thoughts or happy thoughts. So in that moment, because of my story and what was happening, happy thoughts was a much better choice. This was small potatoes. But the idea is if we can observe something without judgment, and sometimes that observation will trigger a feeling. And the feeling is always I feel rather than you make me feel. So I agree with you. We have a choice. I feel because I need.
Yes.
And if I have anger, I don't think anger is a bad thing. It can be destructive if I direct it towards somebody else. But if I'm able to...
Sister Amina, I don't
Yeah.
even speak. It's just an inner feeling, but I don't shout at them. I don't,
And I
whoever I
hurt
think,
myself. It could
I
be
would,
hurting myself.
yeah,
I
it's
would
happening
say,
inside me. My state inside me
of
moved
course,
to a negative energy of anger.
I would, I may have a different approach, and we have to find the way that feels right to us. But what if I don't judge my feelings and I accept all of them? And I learned how to have radical acceptance. It's radical because I know in my upbringing, I would judge my feelings. These are good, or these are spiritual, and these are bad, and they're negative. What if I don't judge them and I look to see what's hidden inside of them? And so, with anger in particular, anger is a red flag for me that tells me sometimes underneath that there's something else happening. And there's something else for me might be like yesterday, I'm tired. I wasn't really angry at anybody. I was feeling tired and a need for ease.
Mhm.
And that's nobody's fault. So I want to go under this. What's under the anger? And if I can allow it, sometimes not so much anymore, but sometimes it's scary for me to accept those feelings that I judge as bad. So if I can say I accept that anger in the moment, under that I'm feeling some grief or tiredness, and just stay present with it. The analogy I like to use is, if there was a tired, cranky child, I wouldn't shut that child out and say, when you're good, I'll hold you. No, let that child come to us. And so I'm letting that part of myself be present with me. And I can understand, Sister Hanan, that I don't, I see changes in the medical system where sometimes I see, my sister had a surgery, that the doctor and the people around her were much more empathetic to her than I had seen before when she'd had a surgery a few years before. I could understand that you may not want to share your deeper feelings with these people, but I would, how wonderful that, let's say, if for me, when I do have somebody I can share my feelings with, and sometimes it's simply in prayer, and sometimes if it's something really big, I have a few go-to people who can hold me without judgment and without trying to fix me, but just sit and listen with an empathic heart. And always it's connecting.
I'm sorry, I lost you. Sit and listen with an empathic heart to the same person who is triggering those anger emotions.
No. If somebody's triggering those emotions,
someone you trust, someone you feel close to.
Yeah, some my go-to person, somebody who understands me but isn't going to fix me, because and most of us don't need fixing. We just need to be seen and heard and accepted.
Mm-hmm.
That there's a great healing in that, without judging what's coming up or trying to fix it, or I tell my story. So I don't know. Thank you for letting me speak. There's a lot here.
Thank you.
So, Sister Amina,
this is something that we mentioned many times in the past, which is just like we sit with illness as a friend and listen to it, we sit with our anger, with our grief. They are all messengers from God, and they are all there to tell us something. And so just don't judge it as because it's anger, it's bad, or I shouldn't be angry, or let me be angry, or no, anger came, welcome anger, Salam alaikum, what do you have to tell me? And when you stay with it, maybe not the first time, maybe not the second time, just seeing it as a messenger from God, as a friend, makes a whole difference. That's what Sister Yamina was saying. You are not judging it, and so you're more likely to find out what's behind it, what's the message within it. And sometimes it's easier to do that with a friend if you have someone that you can trust with no judgment, and just sometimes while you are speaking about it, you yourself start seeing what's going on.
That's true. When I speak about it, a person that I trust enough, and I start the conversation by saying, I want to tell you this, but I'm not complaining. I just want to share this. And then after I say it, then the level goes way down.
Once there's acceptance, if you, so for example, in a mindfulness practice, one of the things that we get invited to do is maybe we're connecting with the moment, the breath, and then one of those thoughts comes up, and just to allow it, let go of the breath and allow it. And in that allowing it, you know, when you have a pressure cooker and you push something down, it's going to come out eventually one way or another. But if you allow it, then the energy around it starts dissipating.
Yeah.
And the time when I go to somebody who's supportive in this work, who knows me, is often for the big stuff, because sometimes I'm afraid that if it's too big, I'm going to fall apart. So I either have to really take time for myself to know how to sit quiet in prayer or mindfulness. And if it's a really big issue, alhamdulillah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed people in our lives that will support us in the way that we would support them.
My fear, Sister Amina, is at this point, I become a source of a negative energy for that person that I hold dear enough in my heart, that that they are the chosen one that I can open up to. So sometimes I'm just even hesitant about doing that solution.
So there's two things. One is you can ask the person, you can let them know exactly what you express now. You say, I'm concerned that this is going to be a detrimental effect. Is there a time that you would be willing to listen to me? And maybe not. And the other piece is to have somebody that knows how to hold that space for you, who can be present for you. Maybe they can't, and it'll be a learning together. But you just shared that beautifully. You can share that with someone that you feel can hold that space and listen.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Sister Amina, and Sister Nan, and everyone else. As the time is nearing, I wanted to offer a recap and then turn the mic back to Dr. Yamina to close just tonight's session, but inshallah we'll have other sessions. So in today's window, we looked at the ease and abundance with which out of simple substances, artful forms and various rich forms come out, and that was a sign for us to behold, to see that there must be this amazing, all-knowing, all-wise creator who is also Al-Quddus, the holy, free from all faults. And that brought a number of questions about how do we act with this awareness. And we had a discussion about how that turns into action in terms of acting in the world, and in terms of serving others, and also in terms of balancing. How do we be part of this universe which is balanced in a way that is active, not just sitting passive? We need to do something, but how do we do it in such a way that we don't ruin the balance, but are in harmony with it. And then the question of illnesses and challenges in life came, and these are all these three: how do we act, how do we serve, how do we balance, and how do we what do we do with the challenges in life, including illness, and that we all have our own challenges in different ways. So so it is interesting how we started with reflection of science about birds and eggs and seeds, and then it brought us to recognizing Al-Quddus and Al-Rahim, Al-Hakim, and then
it shows how much we need.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. If there is such a creator who is abundantly, easily creating out of like a gooey substance a bird, then that creator is absolutely present with me, and then inshallah that will lead for us to
possibility of infinite miracles here and now.
Inshallah, and jazakallah khair for everyone for sharing their questions and situations. These are so-called practical applications that we all need. So with that, I'm going to turn the mic to Dr. Yamina to close tonight's session, and then we'll inshallah have a session on Friday night on healing with istighfar at 8 p.m. Our October series led by Sister Maha with Dr. Yamina. And then we'll inshallah have our Wednesday discussions continue as well, inshallah. And then on Tuesday, so Tuesdays and Fridays, healing with istighfar, special October series. And on Wednesdays, we continue Quranic wisdom, the windows. Bismillah. Jazakumullah khair, Dr. Yamina. May Allah bless you.
Thank you. Thank you. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وارنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه آمين والحمد لله رب العالمين نستغفر الله نستغفر الله نستغفر الله العظيم الكريم الرحيم الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ونتوب إليه سبحانه آمين والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين آمين يا أرحم الراحمين. Thank you, and thank you everyone for all your comments and also your being present, inshallah, and your du'as and your prayer. May please pray for everyone. فالله خير حافظا وهو أرحم الراحمين. God is the best of protectors and He is the most merciful of the merciful. في أمان الله.